All right. We are recording. So once again, welcome to Finding Your Own Unique Path to Success. So with us tonight is friend and colleague BJ Harrison, whom I'm going to introduce you to momentarily. And know now that the call is being recorded for your continued access and reference. So let's jump right in, because I know one of the things that's on everybody's mind is, well, how do I make a successful go of this? I mean, after all, isn't that effectively what we're all here trying to do? A word on me, your host, for those of you who don't know me. I, too, got my start through SuchaVoice like many of you, and that was in 2008. And I have been a voice actor since that time. You can see my bio on the screen if you have the visual. I voice all over the world, and I do it from Vermont, where I live. And I have voiced for Amazon and Fox and GE and MetLife and a host of other companies in a host of different applications and varieties. And I've also been a national producer for over 6 years now. Worked in studios all over the country with voice talent like you guys, and with musicians, as you might expect, and some best-selling authors. But I suspect BJ might know more authors than I do, but we'll get to that momentarily. So, our guest, BJ Harrison, and his bio on screen for you now. Award-winning voice talent of the Classic Tales podcast, which has over 17 million downloads at this point. So, BJ is audiobook voiceover actor extraordinaire, and has just an amazing story. And he's going to share that with us tonight. But he's texting me currently that he can't see his own bio. All right, Beach. Well, I'm just going to add really all of the slides. Yeah, we can move around it. Gotcha. Sorry, everybody. Anyway, as you can see here, BJ is kind of a big deal, as Ron Burgundy would say. He's very humble, but he really is quite a story. And with a New York Times top 10 podcast over an extended period of time, and some of these accolades, as you can see here on your screens, his version of Telltale Heart was #3 best-selling audiobook in 2008 on iTunes Music, and Hamlet was one of Audible's top 5 Shakespeare titles for 2 weeks in 2014. It's currently at #8. And his reading of Fitzgerald's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which many of you may know, was #2 best-selling audiobook in iTunes, and stores for 6 consecutive weeks in 2008, 2009. So Alice in Wonderland has 744 5-star ratings as of, I think, yesterday. So the man is getting it done, to put not too fine a point on it. And I wanted to, he has graciously accepted to be on this interview, and I'm just delighted to share him with you. So let's get right into content here. Now you know he is audiobook voiceover artist extraordinaire and SuchaVoice Premier VIP alumni, as many of you are in that program or are alumni yourself. 17 million downloads is just a staggering number. So that's fantastic. Hi, BJ. Welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
I can. And hopefully everybody else can hear you well as well.
All right. We're in business.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Whew, all right. BJ is very quiet, says someone. Well, you're quiet in my phone too, but I can't hear you. BJ, are you working on just the phone mic, or do you have a plugged-in mic to your phone at this point?
I'm actually not on the phone. I'm through my computer, and I'm using a headset. So.
Gotcha. Can you turn the volume of your output up?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I would just go into your audio settings, to your input, which would be your mic, and go ahead and slide that up, and that should hopefully make you louder for the rest of us. Can you try that?
I did. Did that do anything? Anyone?
Nope.
No, same thing. I'm sorry, I'm such a disappointment. That was such a great intro, and I'm letting people down. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. You are audible, so it is low, but you are audible, and we are recording the call. So, the key is that we have you here, so we can deal with low audio. Everybody will just have to turn their speakers way up, and which will make me screamy, but you'll at least be able to hear BJ.
That's so disappointing. I'm sorry about that.
No. Don't give it another thought. It's fine. We will adapt. Okay, let's get into the slides. BJ, to start at the very beginning, what did you do before you became a professional voiceover actor?
What I did for about 20 years, I was a sculptor and a scenic artist for television and film and projects anything that came through Utah, I tried to work on it, basically. So I did a whole lot of different things. I worked on stop motion animated films. I worked on anyway. That's what I did. I was a sculptor and a scenic artist, and for about 20 years. And when I first started in it, I discovered what audiobooks were, because I could listen to those while I was working. It was awesome. So anyway, that's what I did. And
so, like many of us, you were not a showbiz personality who was either on mic or on camera.
No, I was not. I mean, in high school, I was in the plays, and I was, I loved acting when I was a kid. But till I was in my mid-30s, I didn't even consider being a voice actor or an audiobook producer, narrator, any of that. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, first of all, how long at this point have you been a professional VO?
I've been professional, like full-time, for 4 years, but I started around 10 years ago. It took me about 6 years to be able to transition from doing it at all to doing it part-time to doing it full-time.
Okay. And any idea how many audiobooks you have done to date?
It's over 300. I don't have an exact number, but it's over 300 at this point. So.
And how many are you currently commissioned to produce?
Right now I have 17 books right now at this point. I just finished a project with another author who gave me, I think it was 42 books, and that took years to finish up. But, so this is another author with another series, and she just hired me for 10 more. So most of those are shorter novellas. It sounds super impressive. They're shorter, but yeah, I've booked 100. It's my 100th title through ACX that I've actually been commissioned and paid for.
All right. Well, I do take issue with the not that impressive statement, because I think that is very impressive. But folks, I told you he's humble. All right. And for the benefit of those joining us tonight, we are going to get into the details of how. Right. I know that's on everybody's mind. we have, I said the collective we, but as individuals, we have unique pathways into the business, and there isn't one pat formula that works. And I think it's a way that we get to experience creativity outside of the context of voiceover in finding our path. Now, of course, folks who are new to the business, some of the folks that are on the call now are just coming into the business. You have a lot of questions about, well, I don't know what my path is going to be. How do I find my path? How do I even know what path I should be walking? And I'm sensitive to those questions. So we're going to get into some details here as we go, but want to get a context of BJ's scope and experience, and it's pretty impressive so far, Beach. Thanks. Now let's just spend a minute on the SuchaVoice Premier VIP program that you came through. You were already on your way into audiobook voiceover, so you were really already working professionally in voiceover when you and I met.
Yes.
And when you came into the Premier VIP program. So tell us about that particular experience, if you would.
I just had a great time. It was interesting because, see, I have a lot of, self-taught skills. I had been doing audiobooks for, 7 years when I met Brian and decided to jump into this, the VIP program. And I had taught myself a lot of things wrong, actually, that may have worked pretty well or okay for audiobooks, but trying to make that transition over to voiceover, it just didn't, anyway, it didn't quite work. And so, I had one really kind of ground-shattering, earth-shattering moment. I don't know, it was pretty cool. When we were working on the program, and a couple of us had different, it was a pretty emotional script. Do you mind if I do a little bit? Is this okay? If I mention this?
Oh, yeah, by all means, please.
Am I going too long? I don't know what,
No, please. You're doing great, man. Go.
Am I doing it right? Okay, I'll keep going then. Anyway, there was this moment when Brian, gave several of us the same script to read out in front of everybody. And of course, I get up there and I'm all cocky and I know how to do this professionally. Give me a break. So I got up there and I didn't mind. I did the best I could, and it was like, well, it sounds nice. You said the words in English well, but it's flat. It just sounded flat. Brian was nice enough not to say that, but I could tell what everybody was thinking. And then the gentleman next to me, who was, it seemed, and I may be wrong, but it seemed like he did not have that much background in drama or in theater or in, that much training, and he seemed kind of like a new guy, He got up and he read it and just totally schooled me. It was amazing that, this new guy, hey, I'm supposed to be the hot shot here, right? But this new guy got up there. His read was so authentic and real that you were just enchanted. It was incredible. And, that was like, in all of the training I've ever had, that moment really was transformative for me because it really brought home the idea of, it's got to be real. It's got to be real. You can be technical. You can be, you can have all of the wonderful other points all in a row. But if you're not real and sincere and open, it's just flat. And I don't know where I would have learned that if it wasn't for Brian and this great program. That was my biggest takeaway was that, as well as all of the great one-on-one training that Brian was able to help me out with. But anyway,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot. Thanks. And but just to be clear, I'm not fishing for compliments, but I do appreciate the compliment because I did have the honor of being BJ's coach. I'm not actively in the coaching roster now because I just love being behind the mic too much and have the level of work to do that. But hearing you say things like authenticity and being real, intellectually we understand these things, but I appreciate the vulnerability of your point in saying that as a person who at the time, was already a successful audiobook voiceover actor, understanding it intellectually and being able to execute it are very different things. And, BJ and I were reflecting on this just briefly before we started the call tonight, but for the benefit of the group, I'll reiterate, we, in our one-on-one training, in our one-on-one sessions, we just kind of had to work through a very honest process of understanding each other and learning how to technically execute on being authentic. And I've said things, I don't want to get into coaching mode here per se, but I have always maintained it's better to actually be believable than to try to convince somebody that you're being believable by acting believable, which again sounds in some ways, I suppose, self-evident, but again, executing a thing and understanding a thing are two different things. So I'm gratified to hear you share that was a foundational learning moment for you, and that you were able to really sort of take that and move with that. And looking forward now, or even looking back since that time, how has that experience impacted you in practical ways?
I think it has absolutely helped me get more work, to just book more work and feel more confident in my auditions and in my reads. I mean, I was kind of like just starting out at being professional, about being able to do it full time. And, I don't know where I would have gone if I would have kept in my bad habits. You know what I mean? But now I feel like the glass ceiling is broken a little bit, and I know now how critical it is to be on time, to give people realistic expectations, to communicate with your clients, to, and above all, like we've been talking about, to be real and authentic in my reads. So I think that the training it's just helped me book more work and feel more secure in the direction that I'm going.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about your journey into becoming a professional voiceover actor. You were involved in performance by being an artist and by being on set, I suppose, but you were not an on mic or on camera talent.
Right.
First of all, how did you even decide to pursue this to begin with?
Well, I've always been fascinated with voice actors and character voices since I was a child. I mean, I always have been interested in doing that. When I discovered audiobooks, like I said, when I was working, it was like my world was opening up. I was never personally a good reader. I was never a big reader. I was intimidated by the language and, the thickness of books. Those are thick, But they keep printing those pages. But I really, really wanted to read more of classics. I wanted to read these amazing stories, Three Musketeers and Moby Dick, but there's no way I could. So to be able to, be exposed to these amazing books and be entertained by voice actors, I was in heaven. And I could listen to it while I was working. I was getting literally paid to get educated. So for like 14 years, I listened to every audiobook that interested me in the library. Like I was almost running out of titles in the little library in Provo here after a while. And so what I did during that time, basically, I was doing I didn't know it, I was doing market research. I learned what worked, what didn't, what accents worked, what character voices came off as cartoony. And so then one day in 2007, my best friend Dave Warden, he had a podcast he was a triathlete. He's an amazing triathlete, and now he coaches athletes. But he had a triathlon podcast that was just doing really well on iTunes. And I kind of had this idea of doing a little podcast of me reading the classics. Because I asked him, how hard is that to record in your basement? He's like, you can do it. Heck, if I can do it, you can do it. And so he loaned me his recording equipment. I didn't even have a computer. So I borrowed a computer. I used free audio recording software. I used Audacity to capture it and to mix it. And I made 3 podcast episodes, an Edgar Allan Poe, a Sherlock Holmes story, and a Thomas Hardy story. And I just put it out there, and I'm like, whatever happens, I used the internet at work at the shop that I was working in at the time, scenery shop, to post it on iTunes. And I didn't have internet in my home. And within, I think it's like 3 days, iTunes featured my podcast in like the sweetest of the sweet spots on their main podcast page. This is 2007. So there was no smartphones. Podcasts were just kind of becoming a thing, and not a lot of people knew what they even were. And so they're like, oh, we're going to stick this up there. And it was really crazy. Like, I mean, not overnight. There was like 3 days. But there was a few days when it just kind of took off. There wasn't anything like this at the time. Professional sounding, and at the time my equipment was pretty subpar, but it sounded pretty good for what was out there, I guess, at the time. And it just exploded. My podcast just became really, really popular. I think when I did Conrad's Heart of Darkness, it was downloaded 100,000 times in 1 month. It was crazy. So that's how things on the podcast front kind of took off. But see, then I had all of these people downloading my free content. There was no manual. Nobody knew really at the time. Still, it's kind of shady how to transform podcast traffic into, an actual monetary flow.
Yes.
And that is when I just had to start trying stuff, and most of it didn't work, to be honest. Yeah. So that's kind of a long answer. I don't know if you want to get into another portion of that, but that's how I got started in doing it. The more that I did it, Audible reached out to me. They said, "How about we start selling your stuff on our website?" And so I said, "Cool." And then they hired me to do a couple things for them, and it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, so I'd like to flesh this out a bit more, since some of what you're sharing is that the technology at the time was pretty new and not, I guess the word would be not mainstream, right? Yeah. Like not everybody had it, not everybody knew about it, not everybody was using it yet.
Right.
So it's pretty fresh, right? So if we were to sort of see if we can apply that to ourselves today, and regardless of whether any of you folks on the call are interested in audiobooks versus any other kind of voiceover, I think the concept, still holds, and we can certainly learn from it. This is BJ's unique path, but we can take things from each other's experiences, and what we find works, since there is more than one way to get this done, and we can use that to hopefully elevate everybody's game, which is rather the point. So if we were to look today at, first of all, are there new technologies or new platforms or new tools or apps or means through which we can be heard BJ, and even if you don't know about them, I mean, just like, what's your opinion on that as an idea to get yourself out there?
Well, now we're kind of switching gears. What we can use today. Honestly, gosh, I've taken some other classes on marketing and how to do that, but it seems like the trick is getting your message to the person who hires you, getting your information to that person, right? And
right.
So a lot of, I know this probably isn't. I have not had any luck with the what do they call them? Pay to play sites.
Gotcha.
Voices.com and other. I know that's probably not, in the curriculum here to say that. That's, I want to talk about my path. I've auditioned for hundreds of those. Literally, I have had over several hundred auditions that I've done for those. And for me and my sound of what I do, I cannot get them to work. The best way that I can get work is by actually contacting authors, looking at the things that I do well and saying, well, maybe I don't do e-learning, or maybe I don't do this, and just focusing on what I know that I do well. Hey, I have a voice that works well with audiobooks. People like that. That's how I get work. So I've been able to just focus on however I need to get to the person who hires me. But that's been way more effective for me than doing dozens of auditions.
Well, I think this goes into the concept of, more than one way to get this done. So there's lots of ways,
exactly.
And putting all the eggs in one basket is not something I ever really recommend anybody do. Even if it's working for you, you want to diversify your efforts. But
sure.
For those of you who are new to this, keep it simple and don't be overwhelmed. I will tell you this, just a piece of advice from the producer and from the performer aspect. Cast a wide net, and what I mean by that is, go after any application or context that is good for your vocal identity. Some of you are just learning about what that is, and you're going through the coaching process. But when I say your signature sound, sort of what you really stand out at doing with your particular sound, I would worry less about whether that's a commercial or an audiobook or an e-learning module or an on-hold message or imaging for a radio station or whatever it is. Be open to any and all of that, just as long as it fits your voice. And this goes back to what BJ was just saying about sort of doing market research, which is to say you want to be receptive to how the market responds to you. So if, P2P auditions aren't panning for you and that's just not really a channel that's working for you, okay, that's fine. There's, 20 other methods that you can use. Start working on a handful of those. And you'll learn about what those are as time goes by, certainly, and SuchaVoice teaches a good measure of those. If you are in the Premier VIP program, you have access to the marketing plan and things of that nature. Utilize those tools and resources, folks. If you haven't already, that's there for a reason, and it has a ton of value, so use those things. Point being, as BJ just said, what you really want to do is get your voice in front of people who are in a position to hire you. And let the chips fall where they may, because you may discover, as I did, that a certain segment of the market likes your voice for something that you wouldn't necessarily have been looking at. For me, it was medical media. I have no medical training. I don't know anything about it whatsoever. I don't know a thing about it. I respect people who are in that industry, and I'm very thankful for them, but it ain't me, but this is what I kept getting hired for. And I finally got to a point where I had enough rapport to ask a client, why me? And they told me what they liked about my sound and why it worked for what they were using. But I never would have known that, and I would have missed those opportunities if I hadn't cast a wide net, if I had sort of blinders on and I thought to myself, well, I do have a pretty good voice for commercials, turns out, and I do a lot of commercials in actuality. But if I had only been looking at that avenue, I would have missed all the medical stuff. And I would have missed a niche. So I just want to kind of digress there a moment in a relevant way and encourage you guys, all of our listeners, your pathway, your niche may yet be discovered. You might have to get some market feedback to find out what that is, and you may have more than one. You may find that to be true as well. I do a lot of e-learning, and so I don't do as much medical stuff as I used to do. Now I do a lot of e-learning stuff, and I do a lot of commercial stuff. So these things will sort of, patterns will make themselves known as you try on different ways of getting business. And if one's not working for you at all, okay, move in another direction. If that direction is working for you, continue moving in that direction. You know, not to belabor the point, but I do want to share with you briefly a friend and colleague who is a ring announcer. That has really been his niche, and it's a very, very unique and singular niche, but he flies all over the world at other people's expense and goes to exotic places and goes into the ring and does MMA stuff. He's one of the top 10 ring announcers in the world, and he does very, very well. And I remember earlier on, he used to sort of lament to me. He'd say, "Oh, people want to keep hiring me for this, but I feel like I just want to do this other piece of voiceover. I feel like I'd be good at this. You know, I'd like to do some weather stuff, some news stuff." I said, "Mike, people are paying you to use your voice, and you are effectively saying, no, I don't want that. I want something over here I don't even know if I can have." You see the irony in that. And he hadn't thought of that. But I think it sort of changed his thinking a little bit, and he started to embrace what he hadn't anticipated. He just didn't know that he was going to be favored for that kind of work, but it turned out he was the perfect guy for that kind of work, and so much so that he's recognized internationally. It's kind of, you know, and he's pretty big, and he does very, very well. Always posting pictures of all these cool cities that he gets to visit, but it's very niche-y. See. So he was really kind of looking to the left when he was getting hired from the right, and I was suggesting stop looking at the left and maybe embrace the thing that's on the right where you're getting hired from. So anyway, I don't want to lecture, but I do want to point that out because in terms of our topic, finding your unique path, sometimes you got to have the feelers out. You got to be looking in a lot of different directions as you go, but then don't move so fast that you're not aware of what you're learning along the way and how people are responding to you or not responding to you, as the case may be. Mm-hmm. So I'll stop talking now. Back to BJ. Sorry. Sorry, Beach.
That's okay. That's okay. So my wife and I always say, you know, a gig's a gig. You know, maybe this book isn't your cup of tea or particularly well written or you're enjoying it or whatever, but guess what? You're getting paid. You know, Boris Karloff, the great actor who did the original Frankenstein, people asked him later on in his life, like, dude, aren't you like tired of being the monster and the villain? You know, aren't you tired of being typecast like your whole career? And he said, dude. Well, he didn't say dude. I mean, you know, right. He said basically, he said, hey, I'm getting paid to be an actor. That's awesome. If there's something that I've been able to tap into and feel like, you know who we need, Boris Karloff, I'm there. That's perfect. You know?
I thought you were going to say he puzzled and puzzled until his puzzler was sore. I thought maybe you were going to...
then his heart grew 3 sizes, and he was fine. Felt so much
For those
better.
of you who don't know, Boris Karloff did the voiceover for The Grinch That Stole Christmas. So, very good, very good. All right, so back to our Q&A here, this interview. Your plan to get heard and monetize your effort, I feel like you've covered, and that was your strategy for transitioning out of what you were doing and into VO. You said it took you some time on a part-time level to fully make that transition.
Right.
And I feel like that is a common story. You know, we have our responsibilities, we have our lives, our careers, and you know, you can ramp into the business. And one of the things I'm very thankful for in VO is that the business is conducive to being able to chip away at, so that you don't have to, you know, be vulnerable by maybe cutting ties with something that you're doing in an effort to make this work. You can do both things, and you can work that ramp as long as you need to and as well as you need to until you get to that personal decision where you go full time if that's the direction you want to go. And it sounds like you got there. So as you think back, what were some of your big challenges and roadblocks, and what were some key successes for you?
Well, there was just like you were saying, you can ramp it up, but I mean, for a while I was doing both of them, both jobs full time, and I mean, I tried to record one premium classic audiobook a month, plus do my Classic Tales podcast, and have my full-time job working at the studio, working on films to pay the bills. So basically, I decided not to sleep. I didn't even sleep. I would, I'd get up at 6:30, drive to Salt Lake to work on a film for a 12-hour day. So work from 8 until 8, and then drive another hour, get home at 9, and then work for 3 hours at night, and then get up at 6:30 the next day. So it was brutal. I mean, that's the thing, and I did that for, it seems like years. I felt like that was just my life. I was like known as the guy who gets 3 hours of sleep, and for years it seems like. It was brutal because I had to, take care of my family first, but I also had already committed to doing a podcast and to generating so much other content that I couldn't let go. So it was pretty brutal. So you talk about challenges, that was one. It's just not stopping, But I mean, when you talk about successes, I mean the podcasts of the Classic Tales audiobooks and the Classic Tales podcast, it's just incredibly fulfilling. I mean, when people tell me that they now know an author that they never would have come across, or they learn a story that just touched them that they never would have read on their own, that's priceless. And I've had teachers using my recordings to have their kids listen to, the Pit and the Pendulum and stuff, and they turn off the lights and stuff. But listen to me, it's crazy. And they're using my books to teach English as a second language in Venezuela. And so when people say, you opened up the world of classic literature to me, I never would have touched this stuff, but you're showing me that, hey, this is interesting. I mean, that's amazing, because people's worlds are being kind of expanded by my little podcast because I decided to record books in my basement. So that's pretty cool.
It's very cool. Appreciate that. When you got discouraged and when you got overtired because you were overworked, how'd you handle that?
Just grit, I guess. Just, just believing deep down. I mean, I just believe deep down. There's a reason I was interested in voice actors as a child. There's a reason that I analyzed the voices in Disney's Alice in Wonderland and tried to copy those when I was like 8 and stuff. I just believe that, this is in me. This is who I am. This is what I was kind of, destined to do. And the fact that my podcast was working, I mean, I kept going back and forth to go, you know what, it must be working because it's being downloaded, it's popular, people are doing this. So looking at the little successes that I'd have every now and then, the things that worked out, that helped to get me to go through. But I mean, I'd already lived the life of not doing it. I mean, who knows what the possibilities would be if I kept going. I already know what happened if I don't. So,
very good.
So that's.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a great comment.
Well, if you keep going, anything can happen. Yeah. So.
Because sometimes we, you know, the royal we, right? The corporate we, you know, we get down. Of course, that's natural. We can get discouraged. Things don't work sometimes the way we envisioned that they will, or the way that we hoped. I think it's important for us to be honest about that along the way, and practical about what we do to deal with it. I appreciate the perspective of saying, well, I already know what things are like when I'm not doing this and when it doesn't work. So that's known territory. It's not as, I don't know, it's just striking me. I don't know that I've actually heard it framed that way before. And I think that's pretty liberating, because you know we sort of create these visions in our heads of, well, if things don't go this way, then there's fear around that. And what's the consequence around the corner? And say, wait a second, I just came from that direction. I know all about that. I'm even comfortable in that space. I don't have to be afraid of that space. So let's press on, because what can it look like? I guess it's more positive than negative. It's what can it look like if I am steadfast and I persevere.
Yeah.
And I change, and here's another thing again for the listeners. You know, be pliable, be adaptable, guys. There's always more. There's always alternatives. There are always solutions, even when it feels like there aren't, and you've stuck and you hit a wall, and maybe you have hit a wall, but there's a way around it, over it, under it, or through it. You just got to figure it out. That's when you use your resources. When you and there are, and I'm not just talking about SuchaVoice here. I'm talking about the voiceover community. Insert yourself into the community. You know, there's lots of online forums that are very active. I mean, I'm members of several of them. I'm sure, BJ, you are too. And this is the community. You're not flailing around in the dark by yourself. At least you don't have to be. So just use that as an encouragement too on your pathway, because pathways have briars and sticks and puddles and sometimes holes, and sometimes the bridge is out. But there's a way. So just be encouraged by that. Anything you do differently looking back?
The main thing when I get asked this question, but I say, I always, because when I started having my initial success with the Classic Tales podcast, I'm like, this is awesome. I'm getting recognized for doing my character voices and my accents. People are eating this up. I'm choosing good content, good stories to do. This is awesome. I just want to do this, right? I don't want to learn about marketing. I don't want to learn about making a website. I don't want to learn about building a business or talking to anyone else in the world at all, ever again. I just want to have fun, right? Because so I, this is part of, like, I didn't know where the path was. I didn't know how do I go from being really popular to getting paid and still being popular, And so I expected, and I looked for a long time for a marketer or somebody that I could get in, and somebody that I could partner with, or somebody who could show me the way to go from here to there. And so I tried a couple things. I got into a partnership that was horrible. I bought a whole huge marketing plan from people who didn't understand what I did, and that flopped too. I mean, I made a lot of I tried a lot of things, and a lot of things just didn't work. But you get to a point where you just have to learn all of that stuff. It's not just because you have it's not just the most talented people that get the job. It's just not. It's the people who know everything about the project, everything about it. They do all sorts of things. And that goes for art. That goes for, I think any of the creative type vocations. It's not just the most talented painters that become famous. It's the people who also know how to do marketing and market their products, and the sculptors. And those are my friends. Those are the people that I know, and that's been their experience. You can be the most talented person in the world or in the room. That does not mean you're going to be the most successful. If you're not willing to do the unfun stuff, you can be all really, really talented in your room making sketches for yourself. Because, that might be where you wind up. You got to be willing to do the hard stuff.
Well, and I appreciate that. And agree. I would just piggyback off of that by saying, this industry, like pretty much every industry under the sun that I know of, mm-hmm. Relies heavily on relationships.
Yeah.
And, the formation of relationships never really changes. But as technology develops and we gain access to people that, years ago we didn't. You had to go to mixers and you had to go to, Chamber of Commerce events, and you had to network at business expos and that sort of thing. Or go to events and so on, and you can still do those things to be sure. But I'm saying, the ways in which we form relationships continues to change and evolve, but the necessity to form those relationships never changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as you guys look to find your path and your footing on this path into the pursuit of VO and your dream, know that this is an oversimplification, but it nonetheless is a truism. Know that you must get your voice, your demos, in front of people who are in a position to say yes to you.
Yeah.
And often you will hear crickets. You will hear silence. And that's okay, because it doesn't mean they're not listening, and it doesn't mean they're not reading your emails. It usually means they're just busy, and they're not responding to every email that comes their way, particularly if they don't know who you are. Nevertheless, my experience and observation continues to be that they do listen, and they tuck it away. And when the time is right, and you won't know when that is, when the time is right, they email you out of the blue, and all of a sudden they need you. And if you only do that to 6 people, your email is not going to blow up with requests for auditions. But if you do that with 600 people, you'll start seeing a result. But it's always about relationships. Always is. BJ, as you think back over your career to date, and of course you're still looking forward, and you're in it, and it just keeps growing. So, what is, and I feel like you've shared some of them with us already, but what are some of your biggest takeaways so far?
I'd say some of my biggest takeaways is, if you, let's say, if you believe it, if you believe that this is really for you, if you're being pulled toward whatever it is, whether it's voiceover, whether it's audiobooks, whether it's painting, whether it's whatever it is, whatever you're being pulled toward, there's a reason for that. And if you pursue that and don't stop, you'll get there. That's a big takeaway for me. I had no training. I had no experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I remember tucking my kids in bed, and they said, "Tad, why are you starting a podcast? You don't know what you're doing." I know, but I'm going to do it anyway. And it's okay if you don't know everything. I know that, I'm kind of a fancy guest here, and I'm supposed to know everything and stuff like that, but I don't have a solid 5, 10, 20-year plan. I know that's probably what you're looking for, is somebody who has
not necessarily
ducks in a row. My ducks are everywhere. I've just so many ducks. But what I've just come to learn, and the way that I would do it, I mean, is just go as far as I can clearly see. I know I need to do this, this, and this. After that, I'll do it. But I know that to get more work or whatever it is, if I do this and this, I can go that far. After that, I don't know, you know. And so I do have a pretty solid plan to go so far. I'd like to. Oh, I've got ideas to do all sorts of things, but who knows, you know. But I know solidly I can go this far, and that's worked pretty well. To just take a few steps and not worry about all the darkness beyond, just worry about a few steps that are pretty well lit right in front, you know?
I like that. I appreciate that. One bite at a time, one step at a time.
Yeah, and it'll happen. So.
Awesome. Let's shift gears. I know we're coming to the top of the hour now, folks, but of course, if you joined us late, we actually got a late start because we had some technical challenges, so we're going to go for about another 8 minutes, 9 minutes, somewhere in there. Bear with us.
Let's not stop. Let's do this till tomorrow. Let's just keep going.
Well, let's not do that, but let's at least go for another 10 minutes.
Okay.
Let's talk logistics. Let's talk some practicality stuff.
Okay.
Tell us about your home studio. What is your setup? And what's a typical day look like for you?
Okay. My setup is the mic that I use is a Neumann TLM 102. I love that thing. I have an iMac that I record into, and I've created a little swivel shelf kind of system so I can look at what I'm reading and have a monitor right next to it, and a punch record using Pro Tools. I've hung soundproofing on my walls. I've converted a basement, a bedroom in my basement, into my studio. I actually installed a solid exterior door, so it's a solid door, and I have an insulating wall that I made for the wall of the studio that goes to the outside. So I have a little extra insulation there. So that's kind of my studio. It's well insulated. It has a solid door. I built a wall, and it's really nice. Well, it's really nice.
It is really nice.
Oh yeah, God,
I've seen it. It's very, very, very nice. Yes.
But as far as my my day, what my day looks like, I start about 7 o'clock. I answer emails and do customer service for my website. Try and start recording by 8. I try to record when I'm in full production mode, recording audiobooks. I try and record 2 episodes a day, 2-hour-long portions of a file a day. And then also on top of that, I try and spend about an hour working on whatever. So.
Yep, you're breaking up on us a little bit. Can you repeat that last statement, please?
Oh, yes. So on top of my episodes that I actually record, I try and spend an hour working on my website or more working on my business or whatever I'm focusing on at the time, whether that's doing artwork for my covers, getting stuff ready for Audible, getting stuff up on the website, whatever it is, marketing, you know. I try and spend an hour maintaining the business.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, you have to manage your time and your resources proportionately. You know, BJ's full-time, I'm full-time, but when you're not, however many hours you're devoting towards this effort, you want to spend on proportionate sets of activities all designed to give you a result. And that includes the stuff that you are excited about and energizes you, and it includes the stuff that, is kind of tedious and not your thing. But anybody can handle anything for 20 minutes, half an hour. So if you chip away at it, you will find that it is sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
BJ, let's, early in the call, you were telling us how many books you've done, how many you have in the queue, what's on the horizon for you.
Mm-hmm.
How are you getting just tell us how you're booking these gigs? Like, who are you talking to, and how are you finding these people to talk to, and what's that process about?
Well, I get all of my work, most of it, from acx.com. That's Audible created this website years ago. They actually contacted me when they were first starting it so I could be on the conference call when they announced it. And a lot of the bigger, anyway, it's geared. It's a place. It's where you can go and audition for jobs, And
right.
so I go there and I'll audition. Now, this is kind of interesting. What I tried to do about 3 years ago, I tapped into this idea that I want to prejudice people in favor of hiring. Whenever they come across B.J. Harrison, wherever, I want them to go, oh, I need this guy, So what I did is I really worked on my ACX profile and put a whole bunch. I think I have 50 demos on there now. So people can really listen to it. They can get a good idea of like, oh, this guy's serious. He's been around. I've tightened up my little description of my voice using the SuchaVoice training. But so anyway, I wanted to prejudice people in my favor. So if they go to my profile on ACX, they're like, oh, this guy's legit. If they go to my website, they can go, this is a professional website. He's got 200 titles or whatever. He has a podcast. He has, I want to show them all of the things that I have going for me, all of the different aspects of the things that I do, just to make them feel comfortable, like, oh, okay, if I go to this guy, he's obviously done this. He can take care of me and get it done right, on time, and on budget. So try and prejudice people to be in my favor, basically. And that's worked out very well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent advice. Appreciate that. What's on the horizon? Where are you looking to go in your career from here?
Oh, well, I mean, I'd love to just, honestly, I'd love to just do classic literature. I'd love to do all of Alexander Dumas' books and all of, everybody. I would love to get to a point where I don't need to do, to be hired, and that I can develop my Classic Tales brand further. Because that's where, I love doing stuff for other people. It's a great privilege. It's a wonderful opportunity and an honor to be hired by other authors to produce their babies. They've put so much hard work into this. It's a great honor to be able to do other people's stuff, but, honestly, where I get my real enjoyment is when I do the Classic Tales, introduce people to new authors, and it also stretches my understanding. I have come to learn about all sorts of new authors and new stories that I'd never run across before. I didn't know that I would. So that's where I want to go.
Very cool. And so to do that, you need subscribers to your podcast to enable you to make that sustainable. Is that right?
Well, to do that, I need a lot of things. I would like to have an app where I can have my podcast and my shopping cart and my website all in one. People can go. And also So I need a good app. I need a solid place where I can keep my customers, and then when I get that, then I can go and market and try and push more people to listen to the free podcast. Then they can subscribe. Then they can start getting their audiobooks and be a subscribing member. So
I think it can't be understated here for our guests that the dissemination of free content is a proven method to establishing credibility and value, and thereby justifying the expenditure or investment in some kind of a fee. But in VO, traditionally speaking, we're just booking gigs from either our demos directly. Sometimes you just get hired that way. MetLife and Amazon and others have just hired me, for example, just based on the strength of my SuchaVoice demos. But sometimes you have to audition, and that's your vehicle to be heard. That's your foot in the door, I guess, if you want to put it that way. So whereas BJ, you're using sort of the free line, travel on the free line, and pumping out high quality content, and using that as a vehicle through which you generate a transaction. a great strategy, a proven strategy. It is a little bit out of the box in the context of the typical voiceover dynamic. But to me, and hopefully for you guys as well joining us on the call, it just kind of punctuates and illustrates the point. There are all sorts of creative ways to go pro in this business. There is no one way that you necessarily have to abide by. Think creatively. And as BJ said, if you believe it and you pursue it and you're diligent, you can get there. Any final words of wisdom you'd like to impart?
Well, I don't know how much wisdom I had to begin with, but just again, I guess I just reiterate, hey, just don't stop, don't wait for someone's permission to go forward. Don't wait for a stamp of approval from anybody. If you're drawn to this,
good for you.
Go for it. You know what happens when you don't do it, but anything can happen when you follow the white stag. When you just follow yourself and where you feel you're being pulled. I mean, anything could happen.
Very good. Appreciate that very much. Folks, the website is thebestaudiobooks.com. It's on your screen. thebestaudiobooks.com. And you can go to BJ's site. BJ, other URLs we should be aware of?
Check out my Classic Tales podcast wherever you get your podcast. That's free. And yeah, I
subscribe. I do. I love your stuff. I'm not trying to flatter you. It's great.
Well, we have a great time.
All right, my friend.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, Margaret had asked where we can hear samples of your work, and certainly the Classic Tales podcast is there, and we have just revealed your website as well. Patricia asks, incredibly impressed with how BJ was able to maintain his physical health during the period he was doing the, quote, double duty with the day job and the VO and the, quote, other hours. Do you have any suggestions for maintaining scheduling, physical fitness, wherewithal? Not to mention, how are you able to stay normal with your family and friends? Sometimes I like that. I appreciate that, Patricia. Sometimes she worries about getting so caught up in her commitment to pursuing VO. She doesn't want to get lost in that. So
yeah.
Just some questions around that, if you would.
As far as maintaining, my wife, her dad is a production designer in film, so she is used to the gig economy kind of thing. She was raised on. She's used to the long hours of my of me working, and she was incredibly supportive. She understood. I literally could not have done this without that support system. But as far as maintaining relationships and everything, just keep an eye on it. Don't neglect. I mean, don't try. Of course, we want to do everything. We want to get everything done. But don't neglect the things that are really important. Sometimes you got to prioritize. And refocus. I mean, now, because of my wife doing that for so many years, I mean, and all of that, I really make an effort now to prioritize them absolutely as much as possible. If I have an audition that I'm going out on or anything like that, I try and absolutely put them first. She still understands I have to work for a living, but if there's ever any conflict, now I'm able to prioritize them where I could before. So just maintain it. Make sure you don't let people fall through the cracks, like Brian said. Life's about relationships too. So
appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
And just for the benefit of the folks, if I may, BJ, just got back from a month in France. So
I did.
With your family.
Yes,
with your family.
Yeah, we took all of us to France for a whole month. It was kind of surreal. It was very much a glass ceiling that was shattered. I never thought I would even make it to Europe, let alone with all of my kids and my wife. So, but we did. So anything is possible as long as you don't stop.
Well, and that's right. You just keep forward momentum, forward movement.
Yeah, moving forward.
That's right. BJ, I want to thank you for your presence, your willingness to be here and share your story with us. I hope all of our listeners here have enjoyed it and gotten good things out of it. I appreciate it. It's funny. It doesn't matter what chapter you're in this journey in voiceover and how long you've been doing it or how much or how profile the jobs, or we can all learn from each other, and we can all benefit from each other's stories and experience and pitfalls and pains and triumphs and encouragements. So on behalf of, and there's lots of thank yous pouring in, by the way, on behalf of everybody on the call, BJ, thank you kindly for all of this. Much appreciated. So
thank you. That's very nice. Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
You are the man, my friend. All right, guys and gals, guests, remember, we are recording this call, and you will have access to this through your members. If you are Premier VIP members or alumni, you have access to the replay through your members portal. If you guys are on the call and you haven't gotten training yet, you haven't gotten demos produced yet, but you're serious about voiceover and you'd like to pursue this in your own path, which may be very, very different from BJ's and certainly mine, let us know. We'll help you. My email is Brian, BRIAN, @SuchaVoice.com. Let me know if I can help you, and if I can, I will. BJ, thank you once again. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now, and stay on your path, everybody. Keep walking your path, one step at a time. Anything else, Beej?
No, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. It's been great being with you today.
All right, buddy. Keep at it.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.